You ever wake up and just know your day's about to get complicated? That's the sixth sense you develop, living on the kind of land where you know every sound. The breeze through the pines, the loons calling on Lake St. Mary, the creak of your own porch. But gravel crunching under unfamiliar tires? That's always the first note in a bad tune. Let me tell you, that sound still sets my teeth on edge. This particular Tuesday started like any other. Fog curling over the water, sun not quite making up its mind to rise, and me standing in my kitchen, pouring coffee into the same steel mug I've carried since Reagan was president. I liked to believe I'd earned a little peace in retirement, a few years just to fish, putter, drink bad coffee, and watch the light on the lake. I thought I had time left where the worst surprise was a line snapping or the wind picking up. Yeah, turns out I was wrong. I heard those tires before I saw them. Glanced out the window, 2 fingers pulling back the curtain, and there they were, 3 SUVs lined up like a parade of undertakers. Not a neighbor in sight, just 3 men in matching black polos, HOA logos on their chests like little silver badges of honor. Clipboard, camera, the works. They got out and scattered, one snapping photos of my porch, one marching straight down my dock like he owned the damn water, and the third, clipboard in hand, sauntering up my drive. He didn't even say good morning. Just, Mio Davenport, like he was calling roll. I told him, yeah, that's me, and this is my land. He gave me that practiced, patronizing smile, offered up a folder with a shiny logo, and started talking about the Millwood Reserve Homeowners Association, expansion zones, full market value, relocation incentives, you name it. They wanted my land, plain and simple. 3 days to decide, he said, like that's all the life you need to uproot everything you ever loved. I didn't even touch the folder. Just stepped out so the screen door could shut behind me, pointed out that little red camera blinking under the eave, an old habit from another lifetime. You've got 30 seconds to leave, I told them. First, you're trespassing. Second, I'm not selling. Third, you have no authority. Your HOA stops 2 miles south and it'll stay that way. Fourth, you're being recorded. That got his attention. His fake smile vanished and he left, but not in a hurry, and that was the part that bothered me most. Next morning, there's an envelope taped to my gate, dead center, like some Wild West bounty notice. Big red stamp, legal notice, intent to purchase. Inside, 7 pages of pure fiction, phony maps, fake municipal seals, legalese about community expansion easements that never existed. They'd even drawn a dotted red bullseye around my house. I'd seen enough fraud in my day to spot a fake. Hell, I used to chase folks for it when I worked for the state. Now it was my turn to be the target. So I called in a favor. Reed, down in Augusta, still owes me more than one. Told him to run the docks for fraud. Then I walked my land, like I always do when I'm angry. That's when I spotted it. 3 fresh yellow X's, stenciled on a rock, a tree, and the end of my dock. That's how you mark land for survey, or for demolition. I hadn't hired anybody, so I knew this was another shot across the bow. Later that day, another official letter shows up, this time from the county tax office, claiming my place had quadrupled in value due to pending commercial integration. Cute. I called the actual office, and the clerk nearly laughed. No such reassessment. And by the way, I was the 3rd one this month to ask about gray triangle watermarks. Looks like I wasn't the only one being targeted. By that night, I was done playing nice. I set up every camera I had, checked the feeds every hour. Sure enough, in the middle of the night, a pair of headlights crept along the tree line. 3:19 a.m., someone slipped into my boat shack, broke the lock, and left a note. You can still sell. It gets harder after this. Not exactly subtle, but subtlety's overrated when you're running a scam. Now let me back up a sec. I'm not new to this game. I spent years rooting out land fraud and developer shenanigans for the state commission. I know how these stories go. So I printed every fake doc, mapped every yellow X, logged every camera angle. Dug up my old badge just for luck. And sure enough, the faces matched names from a case file I'd buried years ago. One of them, Ray Carpel, used to pose as a zoning inspector upstate, did time for fraud. Another was a realtor, license long since pulled. The third? HOA muscle, unpaid but loyal. These weren't amateurs, they were pros, running the same old playbook with new letterhead. I drove to the address on their paperwork. It was a ghost, just a co-working space, 1 desk, no one home, disconnected number, no mail in weeks. I started to realize this wasn't just a greedy HOA. They'd hired a freelance grift crew, and I was their latest job. That's when things escalated. First came the barrel, Department of Environmental Protection, 2 guys at my door, citizen complaint about chemical runoff. I let them search. Sure enough, they find a 30-gallon drum hidden under a tarp by the dock, tucked just so, with an HOA logo on a patch. Mind if we open it? Be my guest, I said, knowing full well it wasn't mine. Turned out to be empty but coated in deforestation solvent. The same stuff used on Millwood's development 2 years ago, nowhere near my land. The implication was clear. They wanted a violation on the books, any excuse to start the process of forcing me out. I called in another favor, a friend with a private lab. He rushed the tests, confirmed the chemicals had never been used on my property. That same morning, a local blog ran an anonymous tip about environmental risk at my address. No byline, but we all knew who stood to benefit. That night, I stood on my dock with a flashlight, watching the moon ripple on the water, thinking, you want to fight? Fine. Let's fight. So I gave them one. With help from Sandre, another old contact, we drafted a bogus internal memo, leaked it to the right local blog, hinting that Millwood HOA planned to sell the entire lakefront to a foreign development company. Chinese, of course, for extra spice. Within hours, the story blew up, board meetings called, emails leaked, neighbors in a panic, even some HOA higher-ups trying to lawyer up. Paranoia's a hell of a motivator. Then came the twist, Justin Ridd. Young guy, new lawyer, hungry for a righteous fight. Sandre embedded him as a community outreach volunteer. He got inside, started listening, reporting back. Turns out, I wasn't the only target, 2 neighbors too. The HOA had a priority acquisition list, even rated us on how much trouble they expected. My resistance level? High, non-compliant, potentially litigious. Damn right. Justin dug deeper, recording meetings, collecting docs, finally catching one of the vice presidents admitting they'd bury us in paper and bleed us out until we fold. That was the smoking gun. We compiled everything, every forged notice, every phony document, every planted violation. Sandre filed a cease and desist, sent copies to the zoning board, the EPA, and the Federal Trade Commission for good measure. Then we filed suit, me and the 2 neighbors, calling ourselves the Lakefront 3, though I never liked that nickname. Millwood countersued, of course, defamation, obstruction, the whole circus. Their PR team spun tales of community engagement gone misunderstood, but the judge wasn't buying it. Once she heard Justin's tape, "We'll bury him in paper," she stopped the hearing cold and sent everything to the state attorney general. You want to see people run, watch a corrupt board realize they've just attracted federal interest. The media caught wind, stories spread statewide. State regulators launched a full audit. The president of the HOA was indicted on a dozen charges, the board dissolved, their assets liquidated. Turns out they'd created a shell game of fake LLCs and forged dozens of documents. When the dust settled, each of us won a settlement, $890,000, legal fees paid, and every inch of our land protected by new filings. The best part? Peace. For the first time in years, I could drink coffee on my porch, watch the fog lift, fish in the early light, and not jump at the sound of tires on gravel. Sandre came by once more, drank coffee with me, and told me she was off to Oregon, another HOA gone rotten, another fight. Justin got hired by the feds. I told him to keep his head down and his ears open. Last thing I did, I drove to the county clerk, filed an addendum stating my property would never be subject to annexation, HOA inclusion, or community development easements without my written consent. The clerk looked at me and asked, "Planning to sell?" I just laughed. Hell no. Now, I wave at the neighbors when I damn well please. I do it because I can, and because after all that, I learned that you can't always trust the people who show up with smiles and official paper. Sometimes, standing your ground isn't just stubbornness. It's the only way to protect what's right. So let me ask you, when's the last time you had to fight for something that was already yours? Where's the line between standing up and just standing in the way? Drop your story down below. I'd like to hear how you see justice, and whether you ever had to remind the world, in your own way, whose name is really on the deed.